President von der Leyen's press conference ahead of the G20 Summit and of COP26. The President will make introductory remarks and then we will take a few questions. President, you have the floor.
Thank you very much and good afternoon from my side. Indeed, we have two very important summits ahead of us. As you know, the G20 Summit in Rome this weekend and then back-to-back COP26. And I would like to report how we're seeing the development of these two summits and what our position is there. So let me start with G20. G20 is the meeting of the 20 largest, most advanced economies in the world. So in general, we will have a 360-degree view on the world, but I want to focus on the three main topics where the most discussion will be on. And that is the pandemic, or how to end the pandemic. That is the question of global economic recovery. And that is the question of climate change. So first of all, on tackling the pandemic. Here, I think the main deliverable at the beginning to set the stage is the fact that the G20 will commit to the goal that we want to have 70% of the global population fully vaccinated by mid-next year. This is an ambitious goal, but we fully support this goal. If you look at the European Union side, what we are contributing, we have so far in the last 11 months exported over 1.2 billion doses of vaccines to 150 countries, and we have delivered close to 880 million doses to the European people. So we have made good on the promise that at least every second dose that is produced in the European Union will be shipped abroad. It's even more if you see 1.2 billion exported and 880 million delivered to the European people. And we will keep on going with that export. We have looked into the next year, and we expect more than 3.5 billion doses of vaccines to be produced in the European Union, and of course a majority of those will be shipped abroad. On top of the exports, we will, as a European Union Team Europe, the Commission and the Member States, donate more than 500 million doses of vaccines till mid-next year. I expect more pledges from the Member States to come. I am also aware that the Member States have faced some obstacles what the delivery of these pledged doses is concerned. So we are trying to address the issues with the Member States and, of course, with the vaccine producers to speed up the deliveries. Then there is a second topic. This is the one, the vaccines, the exports, the donations. Then there is a second topic underpinning our goal that we want to get better with vaccinating the world, and this is the mid and long term. The G20 leaders will call for an increasing manufacturing capacities in developing countries, and here the focus is on the mRNA technologies. As you know, this is a project that is very dear to my heart. Europe is investing more than 1 billion euros in Africa for exactly this purpose. Our common goal is that we really bring the mRNA technology to the African continent so that it is being produced there. For that, with our African partners, we are convening the pharmaceutical companies, of course, but also foundations, the private sector. We are working on the conducive regulatory environment with the African CDC, building up an African Medicines Agency, and of course with the financial institutions like the European Investment Bank. And so far, we have made good progress with Senegal, Rwanda and South Africa. Indeed, I think it's 2 days ago now that BioNTech signed an agreement with Rwanda and Senegal. So this is moving forward quite nicely. And we are now considering to have also such a cooperation with other African countries like Ghana, Egypt, Morocco, Nigeria or Kenya. This is nothing for the very short term. This is more for the mid and long term. But I fully support the goal the African countries do have, and that is to be more independent in producing their own vaccines. As of today, it is so that if you look at all the vaccines that are administered in Africa, I'm not only speaking of COVID-19, but also the other vaccines, only 1% is produced in Africa, and 99% are imported. The goal is that Africa sets itself to have in 2040 60% of the vaccines administered in Africa also produced in Africa. And I think this is feasible. Now, besides the vaccines, my second point on health in the G20 is pandemic preparedness. As you know, we took important commitments in May at the Global Health Summit. What we do need is a strong WHO to better prepare the world for potentially a next pandemic. And we need to move forward from the ad hoc responses we have right now, more to more structural responses and more structural that are more permanent to establish. And this needs leaders' attention. Therefore, one important aspect is to bridge the gap that we see between finance and health. That is in the G20 to bring together finance ministers and health ministers. And of course, that requires adequate funding. So to underpin that structure with the necessary funding so that we can prepare better the world for cross-border health threats, future cross-border health threats, and also mainly to strengthen healthcare systems that have proven not to have enough resilience during this pandemic. I must say we're not there yet in the negotiations to G20. There are different views on how to do this, but I hope that we will find an agreement mainly with the background of the experience of the pandemic we have right now. So far for the health part in the G20. The second subject we will discuss in Rome will be the global recovery. And given that the largest economies sit around the table, this is also the place to discuss how we can ensure a robust economic recovery. We will also discuss how supply chains in the global economy have been struggling to keep up with rapidly rising demand. And in addition, I believe we will discuss how the high energy prices, if sustained, could pose a threat to the global economic recovery and what measures could be taken. And finally, on the recovery part, G20 is, of course, also the place to discuss the global minimum tax. When we are repairing our economies right now and when we are investing in the recovery, we will and have to pay attention to fairness. And the global tax agreement we have found does exactly that. The G20 will agree on a global tax reform. I think this is historical. And afterwards, it's going to be about implementation. We stand ready to implement it quickly. From the EU side, we will already make a proposal for implementation on the minimum effective tax rate before the end of this year. And we expect the system to be globally in place by 2022. Now, the third topic that we will discuss at G20 with a lot of emphasis will be climate change. As I said, we have the 20 most advanced economies around the table. These 20 largest economies also represent 80% of the emissions worldwide. And therefore, we have a special responsibility to act. The commitments that will be taken in Rome on climate change will somehow be also, of course, a pacemaker for the COP26. What we need is, first of all, leadership. We need leadership for credible commitments for decarbonization to reach the goal of net zero mid-century. But we also need sufficient commitments to really cut the emissions this decade. Science is very clear on that. Science tells us it's urgent. We are not on track right now. It's man-made climate change. So because it's man-made, we can do something, but we have to act. We have to better deliver. And only that would enable us to keep within the goal to limit the global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. The second important topic, not only in G20 but then also in COP26, will be climate finance. As you know, we have promised to deliver year by year $100 billion to the least developed and most vulnerable countries concerning climate change, adaptation and mitigation. And we need to deliver that. There are, if we look at the statistics now, finally encouraging developments. According to the latest report by the German and the Canadian governments, we will exceed the $100 billion target in 2023. So we are making progress, but I think we have to try harder. We should look at providing the $100 billion already next year. There is still a small gap, and I think we should put a lot of emphasis in trying to close that gap. As you know, the European Union and its member states are already the largest contributor to climate finance, with more than $25 billion per year. I expect also this number to go up in the next days. And I pledged on top a top-up of $5 billion till 2027, expecting others also to increase their ambition. And this leads me directly, finally, to COP26. Indeed, COP26 is mainly resting on three pillars. The one pillar is about ambition. So the big question, do we get significant commitments to cut the emissions to actually allow us to stay well below 2 degrees Celsius and close to the 1.5 degrees of global warming? If we look at the latest UN emissions gap report, that shows that currently the NDCs do not meet the goals of Paris, of the Paris Agreement, and thus we are still on a very dangerous course of more than 2 degrees Celsius of global warming. This is worrisome, and we have to get better there. The second pillar is about climate finance. I was just referring to that. And the third pillar is about the rule book on international carbon markets. So we need to make progress on these 3 points mainly during COP26. It is the ambition of cutting more emissions now. It is the climate finance for the least developed and most vulnerable countries. And it is completing the rule book. And I expect the negotiators to do the utmost that we really advance in those 3 topics. Finally, a look on Europe. Europe is on track to become the first climate-neutral continent in the world by 2050. We have a new number that shows something interesting because we have already reduced our emissions by more than 31% compared to 1990. While growing our economy by 60%. And I think this is an encouraging message that shows you can cut emissions and prosper. You can reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. You can produce cleaner, healthier, and more sustainable while growing your economy. And this is exactly what we have to show to the world and what we have to show to our people. And our people are expecting us to progress on that. I think it's good to see that many more countries have signed up to net zero mid-century. But what we also need now is not only targets, but we need very concrete plans and immediate action on the ground, really to show in detail how we're going to get to reach those targets within this decade. The longer we wait, the more expensive it will become. And therefore, it's about action now. Finally, as always, we will launch a number of new actions at COP26. Together with President Biden, I will launch the Global Methane Pledge. Under this pledge, we commit to reducing methane emissions by at least 30% by 2030. Methane, if you look at the greenhouse gas emissions, greenhouse gases, is the lowest hanging fruit. It is 80 times more warming than CO2, so there's urgent need to do something. And there is a lot we can do. And therefore, I'm glad that by now 60 countries joined us so far. And of course, we are encouraging others to join this ambition. The second initiative will be that I will announce a financial contribution of €1 billion to the Global Forest Pledge. That includes 250 million euros to the Congo Basin. You know that protecting our forests worldwide is a priority for the European Union. The forests are our best allies in fighting climate change, so we need really to protect them. The third initiative we will launch is on innovation. Innovation is key to fight climate change and to progress into a circular economy with clean producing procedures and more sustainable consumption, and therefore future technologies will be the key to help cut emissions. We want to demonstrate, and this is the core of this initiative, that investment in green innovations pays off. So in Glasgow, I will launch together with Bill Gates a program called Breakthrough Energy Catalyst. We join forces there. The aim is to prove that if you have a breakthrough innovation, of course, at the very beginning, it's a bit more expensive, but if we relieve that green premium, we help this innovation to be more fast in being market feasible and to scale up better at the markets, such as, for example, innovation in clean hydrogen, sustainable aviation fuels, carbon storage, carbon capture, and the energy storage, such to name the 4 fields where we will be investing in. Last but not least, the fifth initiative that we will presumably start, we're still working on it, that is joining the US, the UK, Germany, France, and the European Union to launch, together with South Africa, a just energy transition partnership. The idea is that the countries support South Africa to phase out of coal faster and to go earlier and faster into developing renewables. We're still working on that, but I'm confident that we are going to launch this new proposal, and then this partnership could become a template on how to support just transitions around the globe, with sponsoring countries and countries that have to move on faster in the just transition. That was quite a bit. Sorry for being a bit long, but it's important 4 days ahead of us. And back to you, Dana.
Thank you very much, President. I will take a few questions alternating between the room and the colleagues connected online, and there are many of them there. Irini first. Go ahead.
Thank you, Dana. I would like to ask, what are EU's expectations for COP26, and what do you believe is going to be different this time? Thank you.
Our expectations are that we really step up in the ambition to cut emissions this decade. We have to get better with the NDCs, more concrete in the deliverables, because we have to act now. Science is very clear in telling us you're not on track, you have to get better. Global warming is progressing faster than we expected. There is a way out. This is through innovation. You can do it and be better and more ambitious on that. The second point is, if we want to be successful, we have to, as developed countries, we have to support the developing countries and the most vulnerable countries. This is about climate finance. This is a question of credibility and of solidarity worldwide. And indeed, the third topic is the rule book, very complicated but very important because it is about the rules. How are we measuring successes or steps forward in cutting emissions? As you know, there are a lot of percentages, a lot of dates floating around. And how are we, for example, measuring the offsetting of some emissions so that you have accountability, that you have a system that is science-based and accountable for real progress, and therefore really to show the world that we are getting better in fighting climate change. What is different? Well, Paris set out the vision, and that was and is incredibly important. But now it's going to be concrete. It is not only about goals and targets, but now it has to be about very concrete, detailed steps and a roadmap within this decade to make a credible change, a crucial change that is absolutely necessary. And therefore, this is very detailed this time, but it's also a moment of truth.
Thank you. George is next.
Good afternoon, Jorge Valero with Bloomberg here. It's just a follow-up to the previous question, because even though the talks are still ongoing, the expectations are not very high. If we look at the national contributions are not enough to keep global warming below 2%, and the financial contributions are falling short of what we need to be achieved. So having this in mind, what is your best hope for the COP26? And then also, if you expect a deal on Article 6, carbon offset trading rule book during the climate summit?
So indeed, the starting point is not a good one. And therefore, it's also a moment of truth. Science tells us very clearly, and the reports tell us very clearly, you're not where you want to be in fighting climate change. You have to get better. And the second message is, it's not a question of 30, 40 years. It's now. It's this decade where we have to get better. Otherwise, we risk to reach irreversible tipping points. And then it is very clear that this is a high ambition with leadership where we have to go into COP26. It's encouraging the negotiators really to set the bar high. It's not about the question who is going to be more advanced than others. It's a question of survival of mankind on this planet. It's the question of how we're going to leave this world behind to our children. It's a question about, are we going to now do the necessary steps, or are we running more and more into extreme weather situations as we've seen this summer? They will increase, and thus also block more and more resources in fixing the damages, instead of being able in investing into the innovation that is necessary to really get better.
Thank you very much. I will now go towards the colleagues connected online. Patricia has her hand up, first on the list.
Thank you, Dana, for the floor. And good afternoon, President. I would like to understand what you expect from the G20 and how do you assess your cooperation with Premier Draghi during the Italian G20 presidency. Thank you.
Yes, the cooperation with Mario Draghi was and is excellent. I want to recall that we had the G20 Health Summit. That was really setting the foundation for what we're discussing now at the Leaders Summit in Rome. So an excellent preparation, many, many months of intensive work. And without this good preparation, we would not have been able to start now in the intensive talks concerning the health part. But of course, there's also the very important part concerning the recovery and setting the stage for the COP26 in climate. As you know, the final negotiations are still very much ongoing, so as we speak, there is progress. Therefore, we will see what finally will be the result on Sunday evening.
Thank you very much. Second on my list remotely is Ansgar. Could you please connect him?
Ansgar from DPA. Mr. President, on climate change, the Commission presented already in July proposals to deliver its 2030 targets. However, the Member States do not seem to have a strong interest in dealing quickly with this issue. So, for example, the Fit for 5 package was not even mentioned in the recent European Council conclusions, and we hear that intensive discussions could not begin until next summer. Do you think that things are progressing quickly enough, and is there really enough European leadership before the G20 summit and the COP? Thank you.
So if you look at the global stage, Europe is the front runner. without any question. And we do not only have our very ambitious goals, for example, cutting at least 55% of the greenhouse gas emissions till 2030, but we have by now a detailed roadmap that we are working on. We are the first worldwide to have that. So if you look at the global scene, Europe is, as I said, the front runner. But of course, that should not reduce the pressure internally in the European Union that climate makes on us or puts on us to act quickly and to show that through innovation and through change, you're able to move forward to a more sustainable, cleaner, hopefully then totally circular economy. And it is also, I think, our duty and our responsibility to move forward fast, because then we can prove also to the world that growing sustainably and cutting emission goes hand in hand. Now, what the actual situation is concerned, we also have the climate law. So 27 member states, the European Parliament, all have committed themselves with the climate law. That is very clear, and now we have to deliver.
Thank you very much. Maciek.
Thank you, Dana. Maciej Sokołowski, Polish TV, TVN24. Madam President, may I ask you about Poland and yesterday's decision of the European Court of Justice? Do you think that €1 million per day is enough to convince Poland to suspend the disciplinary chamber? Or what if it's not enough? And the second, about the recovery fund. So far, you've been to 22 countries to hand over the decision. Could you picture yourself in Warsaw handing over the yellow folder with the decision accepting funds for Poland in coming weeks? Thank you.
I could and can picture myself in every member state handing over the envelope for the next generation EU. And the preconditions are very clear for that to happen. We have agreed, and this is in the regulation, to have investment and reform. And the reforms are linked to the European semester and the country-specific recommendations. There is a long-standing country-specific recommendation for Poland, that is the independence of the judiciary. And thus, I've always been very clear, we want to put into that Recovery and Resilience Plan a clear commitment to dismantle the disciplinary chamber, to end or reform the disciplinary regime, and to start a process to reinstall the judges. This happens to be also, of course, embedded in the overall ruling of the European Court of Justice. This is a long-standing process. Therefore, there is consistency in what we are asking for. I think it is doable. I hope that we'll reach an agreement, but the reform part is conditio sine qua non.
Thank you very much. This completes the press conference of today. The President is on her way to Rome. She will need to fly very shortly, but see you very soon. Thank you.